morning and good afternoon and Merry Christmas for those who celebrate Christmas. Good afternoon, Willie.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Wesley. How was the blizzard?
Mr. Wesley مش راح تزبط Mr. Wesley. The blizzard is fine. I think we are at the edge of it. I live in Detroit, Michigan, and the blizzard that has hit the northeast, we're kind of at the lower edge of it. So we really didn't get. It's not even 1 inch or 2 inches, maybe 2 inches of snow.
Okay.
Not much snow,
Well,
but it's just cold and windy. I just feel that like people are more sensitive, or the news, or I don't know, the environment is more sensitive to this weather.
uh,
I mean, we didn't even count this as a storm before. I'm not sure.
I think the schools and the businesses wanted 1 day off, one more day off before Christmas, and they made this up.
Yeah, I think there is like an inherent bias to make it a big thing because it pays off. So it's I think it's affecting our decisions. But people who make these decisions, they make them based on data. They don't make them based
Mm.
on personal opinion.
Yeah, of course.
Driving conditions, how dangerous it is. But to tell you the truth, I don't know. I haven't driven for the last since Thursday, so I don't know about driving conditions. But
There was
people are
a big, a couple of days ago, a big piling up accident on the 75. 100 cars were involved.
really. I haven't
Yeah,
heard of that.
yeah, a couple of days ago.
Hmm.
100 cars, very huge accidents. I
Yeah,
don't think there was any casualties, but many injured.
yeah. Like these days, how did you get that news? How did you hear about it?
Uh, Newspaper, online newspaper.
Which one?
Well, I read like basically two newspapers online: the BBC and the regular normal. What what
You
does
don't
everybody read?
you don't want to name it? No, the point is like you are in London and you know about an accident on 75, and I don't know about it, and it's really opens up a subject about
No,
how do we
because
get news
well,
today.
I read the BBC and I read the Guardian. That's what I read. And
They're not going to mention this accident.
well, yes, when you do the setup, USA different than
Uh,
when you do the UK setup.
hmm.
So yeah, my setup is basically all the news related to the US come first.
Hmm.
So that's how I get the news about it. Uh, we want to talk briefly about, if you allow me, about the World Cup.
Hmm.
Should we start?
Yeah, it's just like before we go there, what you're talking about is maybe perhaps it is here. I'm going to share my screen. I'll tell you why this is interesting. So maybe this in Warren County. Now that's Warren County. Is it in Michigan? It's I think it's Ohio. This
You
is
mean the
Ohio.
accident?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So this is. Oh, I didn't share the screen. Sorry. Here it is. Is this maybe what you're talking about?
It does say, I can't read it. One dead, multiple injured over after 8 vehicles. No, it was 100 vehicle. It's a huge
I don't
accident.
think. I don't think I can find that.
Let me show you. Let me show you the link.
Because and the reason I'm talking about this is because there is an issue in news today.
Hmm.
Because if you've gotten this maybe through like a social media post, It's an issue these days. So, local news, we used to get it from, Channel 7 or, whatever local news, but nobody watches that anymore.
Yeah.
And nobody picks up the local newspapers anymore. It's very rare. And it
Uh,
seems that you found it.
yeah.
Want to share your screen?
Sure.
And it seems that like local bloggers
Uh-huh.
are more
No, they're the
powerful.
ones making the news now.
They're the ones making the news because they use graphics and they use baits like news baits, and they click baits they call them, and they use sensational titles, and
And they
they
make
deliver
money.
them in basically a post. So just like an Instagram picture will basically give you that news. You don't need to read anything. And
Mm.
then the more views they have, the more subscribers they have, the more they can sell advertisement.
Mm.
So it becomes about a race for sensationalism. None of them have studied anything about journalism, not even appreciation of journalism 101. They have no idea
Wow.
about journalism. And that's what you see on the news feeds. Like, I don't see Channel 7 on Facebook. I don't see WYXZ on Facebook. For some reason, it doesn't. I follow them, but it doesn't. I don't see it. So,
But you're right about something. Those big mainstream media, they did not mention the number 100. They said, as you said, maybe 40, 50. But then when you go to less popular outlet, like the one I'm looking at now, Euro Weekly, don't know if you heard of that, then it says 100 cars pile up.
mhm.
Uh, well, it's well, this one says 46, but
So,
WRGT
uh-huh.
reports 100 plus. Uh, Look, the Euro Weekly says multiple injuries over or after massive 100 plus vehicle pileup on I-75. But when you click the link, it says 46, not 100.
Mm.
Strange. As you said,
So,
maybe, yeah,
yeah,
they
so that's exactly what I'm talking about.
caught your
Sensationalism,
attention. You go, you click the link, and
right?
yeah, you're right.
Sometimes it's not dishonest, but it doesn't give an accurate description,
No, you're right. I just discovered this now.
Yeah.
The link says
So,
100. I click the
uh-huh,
link, it's 46.
right.
Wow. In a second. Wow.
So,
Yes,
you
you're right.
know, so I unfollowed. The reason you heard about this, I didn't hear about it because I unfollowed all these small bloggers and, the sensational news outlets. First, because they focus on the negative, because the negative gets a lot of attention. And second, because they're not journalists. Like, this is a professional job. But then we have the other problem is like, what is the source of information today? I don't have cable TV in my house. I don't have these local news. And
Mm.
then I'm not gonna get a newspaper. If I'm gonna get a newspaper, I'll probably get New York Times. And then so how do you get your local news? And if you follow them, these are not very good on social media.
Mm.
Like, for example, the only professional news in Arab American Dearborn is the Arab American News, Sada al Watan, and you know that their Facebook has had just lately been more active. They are like, let me put it this way: they are behind other bloggers on their social media reach. And the algorithms will pick on that. Like the algorithms probably won't show you as much as possible. And who wants to scroll through Facebook anymore? Because it's like every two posts there is an advertisement, and it's very repelling to scroll through social media.
What's I have been very annoyed lately, extremely annoyed, to the point that I am looking for other alternatives for YouTube. Lately, they have been pushing their ad strategy to the point of you just want to just find something else. And I tried to look for something else. They're really, really, really aggressive in pushing their advertisement policy. And I went online and I found out that yes, they're doing this. They were doing this in 2022, and I think they're gonna keep doing it in 2023. YouTube was not like this at all. It used to be like you watch something clean and clear for half hour. Not anymore. Every few minutes you'll be hit by an ad, and I hope there will be an alternative, like a database for all the videos.
Yeah, it's they. At the end, they are advertising companies. They're not information companies. So we have to keep that in mind. Um, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, which is owned by Google. They're all advertising companies. That's uh, their main source of income, and their main strategy is to drive advertising. The thing is about local news. Like, how do you get local news today? We are regressing, because there were at a certain point there were newspapers. People relied on newspapers. Then there were the news channels, and now the newspaper is regressing, and then the TV channels now is regressing, because it's everything is streaming, everything is subscription based. So there is a problem in receiving local news. That's why that vacuum was filled by bloggers who are, it's not like a nonprofit. They want to deliver information for people. It is basically sensationalism to basically get to a point of subscribers where they can charge you $200 to mention you, or $500 to post a news about your business, which is that's like the average rates now in Dearborn, for example. So we do have an issue. I mean, am I wrong, or this is very clear that we have an issue?
Where do you get your news from?
I don't have a source for getting my local news. Word of mouth. I'm back to the dark ages.
Right. Do you know that the Guardian is free?
Well, no, I'm only talking about local news. Yeah. Now, another issue with the international news is that they all want you to subscribe now. They open New York Times
Well,
to read an article, they ask you to subscribe. I stop reading. The Atlantic, Boston, the Guardian, all of them,
yeah,
they
that's what I said. The Guardian is still free.
not the Guardian.
Uh,
Okay. Hmm.
Amazingly, there are a few others that are still free, and everything else is yes,
Yeah.
subscriptions based.
NPR is free, but many others are subscription based. And then they
You've
give
heard of the Have you heard of the slogan? If you don't pay for the product, you are the product.
you what?
If you don't pay for the product, you are the product.
You are the product.
Yeah.
No, I don't understand it.
Nothing is for free. So
Hmm.
if you're not
Oh,
paying for
okay.
it, yeah. So, somehow you are being used as a product if you're not paying for any product. Uh, so yeah, back to the World Cup, if you allow me to give you my impression, because I wanted to write something about it.
Hmm.
I haven't yet. Uh, First, what really, really, really caught my attention, if you tell me what was the like the most outrageous aspect of the World Cup, I would say the aggressiveness of the playing. I've been watching football for the last 30, 40 years of my life, and I remember that back in the 80s, the football was very gentle. You rarely use your arms. You don't extend your arm at all. I never saw this in the 80s. Now, not only do you extend your arm, you push and you fight. And I was so amazed. I was like, I didn't see the beautiful, gentle, clean football that we saw
Right.
when we were kids. It's totally different.
I
Now
agree with.
it's, yeah, it is now it's somewhere between soccer and American football. It's a new hybrid game. You
Yeah,
agree, right?
I agree 100%. And I'm a referee, as you know, at high school level in Michigan High School Sports Association. I don't speak on their behalf, but reflections from my me as a referee. So in our high school soccer, I was also shocked to how much is allowed in terms of aggression. So the rule as a referee, the rule for me at high school level is that shoulder to shoulder is okay. If you go and you push someone shoulder to shoulder intentionally, that's okay. And I didn't grow up with that being okay. Like now it is okay all of a sudden, like after a while, you come back and you see that there has been a change. So it's okay. We only count it as a foul if it's done without the ball is not in play and someone does it, or if there is what we call displacement. If the pushing moves the person from his path,
And he falls
where
down.
he's going north, and then because of the pushing, now he's going east, you displaced him, we count it as a foul. Now, displacement itself is not a foul in FIFA. So it's even more aggressive to the extent that you see, like, if you've noticed Messi, what he does is like he puts all his strength to push the player back, away and then to play. Like it's really pushing, and aggression is part of the game now.
Yes.
And that's not in high school. I'm glad in high school level there's this displacement rule because there's different in weight and sizes. And that's an issue too. Sometimes we have just a big player. Any player he touches, he falls down, and we can't count it as a foul. But that can apply at a smaller level. But if this continues, then this is gonna change soccer even more because they're gonna start hiring tougher players, stronger players. A person like Messi, who's 5'4", is he? Will have less chance in the future. Like when he's a teenager, he will have less chance to compete if this is
Yes. I think I think when a sport becomes only a business and it turns from being uh, entertainment to a pure business, this is what happens. Uh, Also, I think I have a question about the merit and the worth of hosting such an event. You know, the tech price, the official Qatari uh, claim is that it was it cost 225 billion, about this much, yes. But it is estimated that it cost more than that, maybe double of that. So if it is double of that, so that's almost half a trillion.
Mhm.
Almost half a trillion. Now, with this amount of money, even with the like 225 billion, this is an enormous amount of money, and I think the area needs the whole Middle East needed more sustainable development, more than just hosting an event for one time and then it's gone. and you only watch it on footages. So yes, with all the respect and chapeau bas to Qatar for organizing this very beautifully, but then was it worth it? Was it worth this amount of money? Do you think?
Yeah, so I've heard that most of the money that they have spent it on infrastructure. By the
But
way,
yeah,
the
but
second
most of it is not sustainable infrastructure. It will be taken apart, like most of the stadiums.
right. So, like for example, one stadium they are giving to Tunis, and they are taking away some other stadiums, but it was much in really building streets and buildings and accommodations for the World Cup. So a big portion of it is really infrastructure, but how much of it is infrastructure? I mean, the next. Do you know that the next most expensive World Cup, number two, was Russia, and it was 16 billion. Look at the
Wow.
difference. Number two is Russia, 16 billion. Number one is Qatar, 229 billion. And then or Brazil, actually Brazil in 2014 it costed 19 billion, and then Russia in 2018 16 billion, and then um, RSA it cost 7.2 billion. So the jump to 229 billion is like just historical. um,
Yeah, I like. I don't think in the history of hosting the World Cup there was any country which hosted alone the World Cup in one city. This is the only time in Doha. Even now in
right, yeah, because the
20
country is one city.
in 2026, it'll be hosted in USA, Canada, and Mexico, and in various cities also in these countries. So can you
Right,
imagine that? Wow, all these three countries gather together to hold the World Cup when one country in one city could do that. So yeah, that's something that Qatar should be applauded for. But yet, was it worth it?
right,
Like let me give you an example. I was reading about the new administrative capital that's been built in Cairo. It's a new city with hundreds of buildings. It will hold 6.5 million residents, power stations, railways, even a sports city with many stadiums, and one of the stadium is the second largest, will be the second largest in Africa, and the area of the city will be four times as large as DC, as Washington DC. Yet, what's the tag price on the whole issue is only, well, it varied, but the most, like the biggest figure I've read was 85 billion. But then some people say 35, 40, 50. So let's say 50, 60, 70, even 85 billion compared to 225. And I mean, that's sustainable development. That city will stay forever, but not the World Cup. So I don't think it was a smart thing. Yes, we did. I mean, the focus of toward the Arab world and what happened during the event, this multicultural gathering was very beneficial to us, and this exchange of multiculturalism was very. But yeah, alone again, 229 is too much of a price. 229
right.
billion to pay for that.
Yeah,
Another
it's
another issue, and I think you and I won't agree on that, but I just want to say that we've never seen in any World Cup that this push to politicize it the way we saw in this World Cup. Uh, uh, like hidden, there was people who were trying to advocate some hidden and let's name it. it is homosexuality. And and I think I personally, I think the Qatari organizers were adamant to the extreme to stand up against this agenda, and the FIFA backed them up because that's not what football is about. Whether homosexuality is right or wrong, that's not the issue here. That's not what football is about. To push other agenda while playing sports. Uh, also, also, you know, and I know that our societies is like we go by community based values, by religious values, by traditional values, and this is not acceptable, and at least on a popular level it's not acceptable.
Mhm.
So I think there was some kind of heinous agenda played against
I
Qatar,
haven't
but
I haven't
Qatar,
seen I don't know. I haven't seen that really. The only incident in that regard is the German coach's mask. There was no other
oh, the French
incident
said if we win we're going to display the flag. That's what they said, the French.
officially.
And officially
Officially,
I've heard it in the news. And there was,
and there was
I don't
also
know if
other
it's official, like
topics. Yeah, not only this topic. There's with other topics, right? The issue of Palestine. There is uh, the I can't tell any other topics, but at least the issue of Palestine was very integrated into the World Cup and allowed by Qataris. They gave it space to be expressed, which is normal because this is what I feel like
well,
let
what do you mean? Just raising the flags? Everybody was raising different flags. That's the only symbol of
yeah,
being
but
with
this flag
Palestine.
is
Just raise a flag.
but this flag is a symbol, and they raised it, and I feel like why not bringing, like, if a person wants to use his fame to bring attention towards a subject, why not? Like, what's the problem with that? um, what's the problem about bringing attention to an issue? I don't
Because
feel
you
there.
know how sensitive our society and our community towards this specific issue, and try to implement it and to impose it on our culture in such a manner. I don't think that was. I
There
don't
was
think that.
there is a very strong homosexual movement in Qatar, and they are one of the most active in the Middle East, and they're famous, and the government gives them actually space to move. I don't feel that this issue um, is an issue really in Qatar, because Qatar is not known to be suppressive of homosexuality, and I can refer you to the articles and news about that. They're very famous, active people in Qatar that are openly gay, and
And I'm sure
you
they hold the other passports, not Qatari passports or Arab
are
passports.
you sure?
Well, definitely. I mean,
No, no. The Maroon Pride ISMA, the organization, and they're Qataris and they live in Qatar. And Qataris are very wise in the space that they allow their people to maneuver in. Among which is also, which is not usually something that is allowed in FIFA, to have political symbols, but they completely opened up the space for supporting the Palestinian issue, which was beautifully displayed by the Maghreb team and the fans, the Jumhur, يعني um, but yeah, I do agree with you that um, this is a space for يعني it's not a space to make political debates. It's a space for sports. It's a uniting space and not a divisive space. So but it wasn't, overall the whole World Cup يعني did not have really any issues that we can, no
yeah, so it was very
controversy.
successful.
Yeah.
But the do you think the frenzy and the madness we saw that was typical to every other like previous World Cup we saw before?
I'm not sure. I haven't really been engaged in soccer the last two, three cups. I wasn't engaged, but this one really engaged me so well, and it was very entertaining. It was worth the engagement. And I feel it was one of the most successful cups and one of the most entertaining ones. And the final game was one of the best final games in the history of World Cup. So it was beautiful, and I feel that the camera. I noticed that the camera will always focus on the good moves, the good sportsmanship, and avoid showing when there is conflict or pushing. Like when there's pushing or like a confrontation, the camera would skip that scene right away. And when there is a scene of sportsmanship, the camera would focus on it, which was beautiful. The fans were very happy. Qatar did really an amazing job. Like you said, overall, they have really, surpassed the expectations, and they have done a great job. But is it worth? Is it worth? Like if they've done it with 40 billion, okay,
Yeah.
but 229 billion, like you said, it is enough money to
Uh,
actually change the infrastructure of the Arab identity all over the world.
yes.
Um,
Yes. Exactly.
with much less than
Uh,
that. I mean, the budget for the endowment of arts in America is like 157
million.
million. That's all the support that all the art performances get in the whole United States, which makes it one of the best places for art, is 157 million, which is almost equal to the same budget of the Secret Service protection of the president. Uh,
Wow.
Yet, you see billions of dollars. Definitely, it raises the question of effectiveness and using these budgets and money. Unfortunately, there are even less meaningful things that so much money is spent on.
Yes.
Uh, that's usually not mentioned in the news, like celebrations of certain personalities and kings and etc.
Yes. Exactly. Like no. Like Ronaldo, for instance. He's got more followers on Instagram than Instagram itself. I think more than probably half a billion now follower on Instagram. And I was reading that he makes 2 million a post on Instagram when Messi makes about 1 million a post. Uh, Now, when we were kids, yes, we liked figures of sport, but we never idealized them. But now, like for us, we we
We never
still had our
idealized.
own.
We never idealized Maradona.
I mean, do you think we did?
I
I
mean, I
don't. I
think
don't know if we.
he's the most idealized person.
Personally, I didn't because I don't like Argentina. Well, I don't like Argentina much. I was a German and French fan. Uh, but what I'm saying is, I mean, you've heard about his contract, his new contract with Al Hilal Saudi. It's just like uh, they're talking five about 500 million over 2.5 years. This is this is
Absurd.
insane. This is insane for a 37-year-old whom no club in Europe is willing to sign him for 30 million. He's too old. He's too old to play. Even in this World Soccer World Cup, he played only like half hour a game. And now the Hilal Saudi is willing to pay about 500 million for his services over 2 years and a half. Uh, like I don't personally. I think well, I think that idolizing them when we have, and on the same time, obliterating real figures in our culture. Like I bet you now, I bet you, and I bet you like whatever number you want. Ask all teenagers between 12 and 17 in the Arab world, in the 450 million Arabs, about two names: Muhammad Azza Daruza and Shakib Al-Islam. What do you think 1% will know these people? Muhammad Reza Darouza is
Ask people in their 40s and 50s.
so these are idols. These are figures, are heroes. Now we know we don't. I was checking. Like I thought of myself. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Mustafa al-Bahyawi, he's the best nowadays. He's a Moroccan sheikh, and he's got the best exegesis episodes on YouTube about tafsir al-Quran. He doesn't use his own book, but the input he puts is better than the book he uses. Uh, he's got 118,000 followers, 118. And you pick any of these mainstream singers, 40 million, 50 million. So I do think that we do have a problem. We do have a huge problem, and this World Cup made it even worse. We're just losing attention. We're just distracting. We're just distracted from what is good for us and what is trivial for us. I don't want to say not good, but just like it's not. Uh, I'll give you an example. Do you think Israel has a good soccer team? No, they don't care much. They never had a good soccer team. But half of all Nobel laureates are Israelis. Well, not Israeli, Jewish. I don't. I think I made my point. I think, not sure. There was a report by Nielsen Sports. Nielsen Sports Marketing. It was reported by DW. A research. It was a marketing research. Listen to this. 60% of Brazilian, 60% think that they have interest in football. 60% versus 80% of Emiratis think that football is interesting. 80% of Emiratis versus 60% of Brazilians. So yes, there is a tremendous growing frenzy that I don't understand. Probably it's my age. Probably I'm past that. The only game I watched from beginning to end was the final game in this tournament. I mean, but you see that people were like crying to watch the games. In Lebanon, they were like uh, criticizing the government for not doing that freely. Uh, one more last thing I want to say. Uh, Muhammad, what's it, Ali Shariati, when he went to visit the pyramids, it's in his book. I think I forgot which book. So anyway, when he went to visit the pyramids, he looked away and he saw a place nobody was talking about. And when he asked about it, the tour guide, he said, yes, those are the graves of the slaves who built the pyramids. And in his book, Muhammad Shariati, he said, can I go there? And then the guide said to him, no, because there is nothing to see there. And then he said that I ended up going myself by my own, and I sat there and I lived the spirit of all these, with the spirits of them, all these slaves who built the pyramids, who that were come to see. And I went there to just sit with them. I just want to mention something. I went online and I tried to figure out how many people died during building all these stadiums and the infrastructure. Since 2010, the official Qatari government, the number is 414. There's a newspaper, French newspaper, did some research, and they said the number is 6,500, 6,500. All documented, casualties related to the World Cup, 6,500. Another estimate is 3 times that number, because they said, because lots of the countries who have contract with the Qatari government, they don't reveal anything about the casualties. And so if you multiply 6,500 times 3, that's about 20,000 casualties died building this World Cup. This World Cup that we watch and upload and enjoy, and we think it's very entertaining. Now, I'm not trying to belittle what Qatar did. No, no, that's not my. And I think they still deserve an upload, of course. But yet, it was very, very costly in all the aspects. Very, very costly.
I think that applies, Walid, to it's not special to the World Cup. For example, using cheap labor that is contracted, do not have much rights. That's an issue in the third, in the third world countries mostly. That is, it's a big issue. Of course, the World Cup is an opportunity to highlight it, but it's not exception to the World Cup. And similarly, when there are injustices that are taking place in every country, and sport events that happen in it is also an opportunity to highlight it. But I see the contrast that you're making, and it's very interesting. Yes, I do agree with you that, and I've said this before, in multiple ways. United States has 6 main sports. If you are engaged in them, or in half of them, then you will be busy the whole year in events similar to the World Cup that happens 3 times a year. So if the World Cup happens once every 4 years, in America you can live a World Cup every 3 months, because there's the NBA, and then there is the Super Bowl, and then there is this and that. And the amount of time that is spent in spectating sports, and the amount of time that it is spent in just being fans and in traveling behind teams, whether it is the regular football, or the NFL, or the college football, whether it is the college basketball, or it is the NBA. Where colleges now, like, even it's getting to the point of high schools, especially in southern states. I read an article about Texas high school football becoming a major league, just like college football. And if you add all this time that's spent on these, and then all the betting that happens, because this is also has become a gambling industry. I don't know if you know that or not. Even the World Cup was a gambling industry.
Yeah, of course.
So, and the gambling industry that's behind it, and all this, just the amount of time that is spent on that, and then the amount of time that the nonprofit and activism needs, that nobody provides for. Like, if you take 0.001% of the time that is spent on sports spectating, and you put it in activism, half of the problems of the world will be fixed. I'll give you an example. And I want this to be, yani, I've thought about this and discussed this so many times. Look at this, Willie. You'll be shocked. If you are a teenager living in Michigan, and you have made a wrong decision, and you've speeded through your car, the police caught you, you got a ticket, and you got 3 points punishment for you. Okay? Do you know what's the consequence of that?
Well, your insurance will be raised.
I'll tell you what's the consequence of that. The consequence of that is that you have to leave the country.
What do you mean?
Okay, what do I mean? Now you have 3 points on your driving record. That stays 7 to 10 years. If you want to get an insurance, you became 18 years old, and you have this record with 3 points on it. As a teenager in Michigan, if you want to get insurance, guess how much you have to pay a month for a car insurance with 3 points on your record, on your name?
How
It's
much?
between it's between 1,200 and 2,000 a month,
Are you
which
serious?
yes, which is impossible. So what teenagers do is they get a car insurance on their parents' names. But if you add that teenager as a driver, then the cost of insurance is about $400 to $600 a month, which is also very high. So what options does this 17 or 18 years old have in a state that has no public transportation or very poor public transportation? It takes me 10 minutes to go from here to college. It will take 2 hours by bus. It's a broken down public transportation, which is a violation of a human rights. People who are in
Because you know
segregated.
why? Because the big three are preventing the government from
Exactly, it's evil.
supporting any transportation, like public
It's evil.
transportation. Yeah,
It's aggressive, evil, capitalistic intentions. Caring about selling cars, not caring about that teenager who has to walk for 7 miles to get to his job in Detroit.
I've
Um,
been to many cities, and Detroit area is the poorest in public transportation in any city I've been to. Yeah,
right, and it is the poorest also, and demographically because of that, because you're isolating, you're creating islands of deprivation. You know that there is no public way of getting to the airport in Detroit. That's a violation of human rights. That's saying that you have to be at a certain level of income in order for you to
you can go
travel.
in a bus.
There is
You
no
can go
bus
in a
that
bus from Dearborn. Wow,
there's no public transportation that takes you to the airport.
wow.
So in a state like this that has no public transportation and has one of the highest insurance rates in the country, people are left to basically they're either cut off or they have to change cities. And if they change cities that have good public transportations, they're very expensive to live in, like New
Mm.
York and San Francisco and Boston and Chicago. So what other choices do you have? Like, is this a grounds for political asylum in Canada? I want to ask, you know, or should you maybe move to London or move to Paris and live in the, in the outskirts, or Lisbon or Madrid, and maybe work and go to college there and try to, because just it's you're if this conundrum, this problem needs activism to solve it.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
there is no organization, there's no nonprofit organization. Have you ever heard of a nonprofit organization that's fighting for public transportation in Detroit? There's some few activists in Detroit, but not a dedicated organization that fights for this right. And this is an example of one of
Because most
these.
of those charities are supported by Ford Foundation.
Yeah. So and look at us, because we don't see this. Like I'm giving you an example of something that's affecting our life on daily basis. I'm not even going to the major injustices, like the children who are separated from their parents in the borders, and that are, they just delayed, like the court, they need to take a break during Christmas, so that means people are left sitting in rooms. The Supreme Court delayed the judgment on the case, on the ruling that came at the time of Trump, because of COVID, which prevented people from entering into the country. And then you look into their asylum case, so they have to stay at the border, they're not allowed to come in. which means that are thousands of people with their kids sleeping on the streets right now at the borders of Texas and other states, because the court just, they renewed the Trump ban because they don't have time right now. It's a vacation to look into it. Is there people who fight for that? Yes, there is. ACLU and Amnesty International and others. But if you go to the Amnesty International meeting here in Detroit, I challenge you, there is only 4 to 6 people that attended, and they are all over 70, and they have been working there for decades. Why aren't there activists? Why aren't there enough activists, fighting for these rules? People have, their time is pretty much filled with the industrial schedule of 8 to 5 work. And then, yeah, I understand they need some entertainment afterwards. They cannot do another very hard job unless they're really motivated. And with all this entertainment and delusional atmosphere that you are sucked into, you feel belonging, you feel, you belong to Michigan or to Ohio State, and it becomes a religion, and you're totally observed, and you have no time to volunteer. You're not paying attention to other cases. I think we live in dark ages in that sense.
And also because like middle class, like influential activists, they're usually middle class. They're not in need of public transportation, and those are really like the people who can lobby successfully. And for those people who are in need, they have no means to lobby, and they're not. That always reminds me of Aristotelian saying, very important, very, very important. He said that the vocation of man, like the real meaning of being here, the vocation of man is to be involved politically on the public sphere. If you're not involved in the public sphere, you're not even a man. That's what Aristo said, what, 3,000 years ago? And some people think now that no, the purpose is to be happy and to live and to eat good and to see a movie twice a month. And uh, they made us, they made, I don't know if you want to say they, but probably we made ourselves very trivial being of like from being the master of the universe, of just being followers of just our whims and small uh, desires, and that's not what we are here for. If we cannot make a change for the better, then we're not fulfilling our manhood. I agree with
Yeah,
you 100%.
and balance is very important. That's why in the W planner, it's autofocus. In the W planner, I made 5 categories. One of the most important. I'm not plugging it in; it's already a lost business. But it is really, it's more it's more of a really a non-profit at this point. The W planner, one of the most important aspects of it is that it divides your time into 5 categories and asks you to balance between these 5 categories. One is the financial and career, and they're all like color coded. And one is educational, intellectual, and one is health, body, and mental. And 4 is emotional and relational, relationship and family and emotions. And number 5 is nonprofit and activism. So these 5, you have to give them equal times. You have to create balance between them. If you create a goal for one, you have to create a goal for each one. If you divide you have to work on them all, because most people, they focus on one and neglect the other, and that's an unbalanced life. It always causes problems. You succeed in something, but it causes problems on other sides. So I invite for you that you give nonprofit and activism as much as you give family, as much as you give your career, as much as you give your health and body, and as much as you give your education and intellectuality. This is another thing. Like, people think that, oh, I'm done from my degree, I'm done from education. Education is a lifelong journey. The moment that you stop educating yourself, you are falling behind. I know that I'm going to continue reading all my life and I'm totally ignorant. So it's just catching up, just having just enough awareness to live day by day with awareness and mindfulness requires a lot of reading and educating ourselves and should not be neglected. I think with this note we can end today's episode.
Thank
The
you,
first,
Wesley. Thank you. That was very inspiring. And
first episode of Second Thought, Reflections on News and Current Affairs, Wesley and Willy, the third season. And I would like to discuss with you next week, if we can, the trip that we made to East Sussex,
the countryside.
to the countryside, because we haven't talked about that after we left, and I would like to maybe discuss it a little bit in retrospect.
And we can display some pictures too.
Yeah, we will. And other news.
Yeah, good.
So thank you for those who watched it, who will watch it later. Please leave us your comments and topics that you would like us to discuss, and maybe you can join us in discussion. Thank you. Merry Christmas and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Thank you. Bye-bye.